verify compliance with open meetings law notification, adopt the agenda. If you'd all please stand for the pledge of the flag. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, and then we're starting off with the staff and student recognitions for the Whitnall High School dance team.
You could go like behind the podium that way, face that way. Well, so we can get them on camera and see the front of their faces. Otherwise, we only see the back of them. That's why. Emily, do you or one of the girls want to talk?
Dave, does somebody want to introduce?
Anybody?
Sure.
Okay, so these girls were missing 3 tonight. They've put in over 500 hours of practice this season. They start in June and they go to dance camp and they practice all summer 3 days a week, and then they get like a week off when I'm in teacher in service. And then we come back and they practice 3 days a week all year. Regionals week. Regionals week, I think they practice almost like 20 hours that week after school because of it being regionals, because that's what gets you to state. They ended up placing second at regionals. The team that we lost to at regionals, who placed first, placed in D1 hip hop, won it the last 2 years, and then at state they beat them. So it was pretty exciting. I think when they announced second place and it wasn't us, I know they all squealed, and I was like, nope, like, you don't know this is you yet. So first, I'm obviously the head coach, but I'm very proud of all of them. Their hard work this year is huge. They started tumbling classes, and they all have head springs and are working on a ton of different tricks. So to come from having 2 girls on the team that had head springs in the beginning of the year to a whole team of head springs, and doing them simultaneously and hitting them perfect is huge. So, girls, I'm really proud of you. I'm gonna cry. So we'll save that for the banquet. But yeah,
So if we didn't see that routine, what might we do?
come on Friday. If you come on Friday to the boys' basketball team or basketball game, it is parents' night, and the girls will also perform their hip hop routine for the last time this year. So it's kind of sentimental, but
That's great.
it'll be fun. So
Congratulations. That's awesome. Anybody want to say anything? Or?
no. They really talk a lot when we're like together. Sometimes I can't get them to stop talking, but they're shy. So
Well, we're all really proud of you. So thank you for coming tonight. What a great accomplishment. So thank you for all the work you've all put in, and congratulations on behalf of everybody at Whitnall.
thank you.
Okay, yeah, you can all take off. You don't have to sit around and wait. It's fine. Okay, and then if you want to have them start getting ready for the student council report, we're good. Just make sure that green light is on when you're ready to go. Okay. There you go. You can bring it over by you. Okay, so the next item is the Whitnall High School Student Council Report. So just introduce yourselves again and then go ahead.
Hi, I'm Olivia Hawk. I'm the president of Student Council. And hi, I'm Sydney Reinhardt. I'm the Student Council DECA liaison.
Great.
All right, so it's been kind of a crazy month. First of all, we had winter formal meetings, many meetings about winter formal. It's going to be on February 16th this year from 7 to 10, so 3 hours. We sold tickets last week from originally Monday to Thursday, but then on Thursday we made over 100 ticket sales, so we extended that to Friday, and then we ended up selling 116 tickets for $15 each. We're going to incorporate black lights, so that'll hopefully increase student attendance. Well, yeah, it already would have, but, and then we're going to directly communicate with the DJ. We have conspired a playlist of songs that we know students will like, and then send that to the DJ, and hopefully he'll incorporate them, and that will increase student approval of the music, because that's one of the things that they usually have a problem with, so we hope to decrease that. And we plan on, after winter formal, having an open Senate meeting. We've had that once before, and we hope to have the next one after formal to get feedback from the students, hopefully positive feedback.
And then this month, we also had our second monthly meeting with administration. The first one we had was kind of cut short because of the day that we had it. There was a fire drill, and we didn't get a lot of time to talk to administration. But on Friday, February 1st, we had our second meeting, so we got to discuss more with administration this time. So we finalized some more aspects of winter formal, which we've talked about. And then we also started talking about activities for Whitnall Gives Back Week, including the second annual hair donation and the second annual Mr. Falcon pageant. And then this year we decided to instead have a student versus teachers dodgeball game instead of basketball to hopefully increase the student participation on both sides in every grade and every gender. And then we also discussed a new technique that we're really excited to use with the students. We're planning on having student council members visit Falcon Time classrooms directly and communicate to the students with upcoming events. So, and this will also include helping students sign up for the events so that we can increase participation. And we're going to start using this especially with the upcoming blood drive.
So one of the benefits of having the admin meetings is now that we have committee heads for the specific events, so like Mr. Falcon, the pep rally, the hair donation, they will now all, they consist of Senate members, so they have like more participation in Senate than just the exec board. So they're going to now be present at the admin meetings that we have, and then the goal of the admin meetings is a direct line with us and them.
And then just discussing those committees we have now, we have a hair donation committee, we have a pep rally committee, we have a Mr. Falcon pageant committee, and then we also have a food drive committee.
And then our upcoming events, like we talked about, winter formal on February 16th. We're going to have our second newsletter for student council and then probably DECA. And we have the spring blood drive coming up on March 13th. And then, like we talked about before, Whitnall Gives Back Week, which will hopefully run smoothly because we have so many members working towards that, and all of us. So yeah, that's it.
Are you incorporating DECA and student council together?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, we are.
More participation? Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, great.
Thank
you
you very
both.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, then moving on to item 5, action items. A is bid package number 3, 4, and 5. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, and then discussion, go ahead.
Sure. So this is our bid package 3, 4, and 5. So that's the high school, middle school, and Edgerton Elementary work categories. We basically about a third of the overall construction budget. We kind of went through all the scopes in detail. Reviewed a bunch of cost savings items directly with the district team. We basically bid everything out now. Kind of summarize everything approved to date plus what we submitted here, and that gives us to our GMP, or guaranteed maximum price for the project. The last slide, or the total project slide, kind of takes our GMP, plugs it into the total project budget, and you guys can see where all the money is being spent. Our construction GMP has about $580,000 construction contingency. And then on top of that, there's about $100,000 owner contingency. And there's a few owner projects and owner budgets that not commit all the funds, so that would give us an additional buffer.
Yeah, and I kind of laid that out. As a reminder, this is Dan from CG Schmidt. Once again, and it kind of laid that out in the agenda. Excuse me. Yeah, in the agenda. We still have some areas, of course, where there's still fluidity to go. The tech budget, for example, which Chris and Todd are going to be looking at closely, furnishings, those different pieces. But the bulk of everything that CG Schmidt, actually everything that CG Schmidt is overseeing from a contractor standpoint, you see here in the bid at the very last page there. So we're pretty pleased. As Dan said, we spent quite a bit of time on 3, 4, and 5 here, making sure that the things that we want, that wherever there was anything that we could maneuver, we did. And I think we did, if I say so myself, a pretty good job of getting this within a few $1,000s, and then our own budgets shifted to make the $12,000 overage work. $12,000 over on $12.5 million. Pretty good. And so we were able to then just maneuver our own projects to make that fit and make that work. There's a lot in here. If you have specific questions on any of the contractors, subcontractors, now's the time, as Dan's the expert and here for you to quiz him. If not, we're good to go.
The only question I have is with you said we've got about $650,000 contingency dollars. Based on what we're doing, what's the most likely thing that you would anticipate us needing that for?
Site work and the remodels are the ones that kind of expose the most unknowns. The addition itself is pretty straightforward once you get your enclosed and your building pad is set. So we kind of get up about $60,000 to $80,000 worth of site work issues at Hills Corners Elementary School to date. There's still a fair amount of site work at that project that's going to be happening over the summer. That's probably our biggest risk. And then the remodels are about 5% for construction contingency for this type of project. I think that's safe. I wouldn't feel comfortable letting any of that be reduced at this point. Once we're enclosed, some of the risk is gone, but because the way that the schedule is laid out, our remodels and the rest of our site work are all on the back end, so it's probably going to be July until we'll have a good feel for where that's going.
So are we on schedule?
We are. Just a quick schedule for all the projects. Well, early to mid-March, we're going to be starting some work at the middle school for the science room renovation, as well as starting the STEM renovation at the high school. We got about 2 more weeks of masonry at Hales Corners Elementary School, and the steel is being delivered on the 20th of February. So get the steel up, get that detailed out, and we'll be looking to do roof blocking and roofing activities early March.
So did we use any of the contingency?
Yeah, about 60 to 80 of it really for soil, as we were getting ready for the footings and seeing what kind of shape the soil was in. So yes, we have used some of it already.
Most of that was for the building pad itself. Early
Building
on.
pad and some of the drives and parking lots.
So this does not include our owner.
The numbers that you see at the very last page, correct, does not include our projects. So in your board pack, in your board folders, you see the entire budget and how that all fits together, yeah.
The total construction GMP is 12.6 million, the 16.1.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you for the time and the work. And then, so you said we are pretty much on track, right, with the
Yes.
timeline? And then we did post a timeline.
We're getting that from, who's giving it to us? Zach.
Zach,
He's giving
yeah,
us
we'll
the
give you a
Microsoft project
condensed-
files.
condensed
Yep,
version
condensed
of
version
the
of it, otherwise it's way too detailed, so
project.
yeah.
Okay. Okay, good. All right, when should we have those?
We're looking to bring it to the next owner meeting on Thursday.
Okay, Thursday, so then we can get them up on the website by beginning of next week or so.
So we can.
All right, great. Okay, great. Thank you very much. All right, and then I'll take, all in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? None, motion carries. Thanks a lot, have a great night. And we're going to switch items 6 and 7. We have some teachers here for the Freshman Academy update presentation, so we'd like them to be able to go and then move on. So we'll do discussion reports, a Freshman Academy mid-year update.
So we have tonight teachers from Freshman Academy. This is not all of them, but this is a good chunk of them who are going to kind of come and give us an update. So this is our first year going through Freshman Academy, going through this model at the high school, and they're going to share some of their successes and challenges and yeah, just yeah.
All right, so if you all just introduce yourselves.
Yeah.
And then go from there.
Yeah, so like Ms. Leroy said, we're going to give a update and kind of an overview of what we've been experiencing with our flexible freshman academy model so far at the high school this year.
I'm Travis Rizzo. I teach health.
Brenda Burgett, I teach English.
Peter Welch, special ed.
Jesse Tossiv, biology.
Rachel Shear, the literacy coach.
If you go to the next slide, it will give you an overview of all of the teachers. So English teachers are Brenda Burgad, Ben Cry, and Laura Meyer. Global Studies are Andrew Bauman, Matt Danke, and Steve Kujawa. Biology is Jesse, Josh Post, and Rob Wyduck. Health is Travis and Rachel Licht. And special ed are Becca Foss and myself.
So first to talk a little bit about the structure, if you're not super aware, what we've done with the freshman schedule is it's a 3-hour learning block, which sounds pretty overwhelming, but what that allows us to do is we can break up the content area however we see fit for that particular topic or project, whatever the students are working on. So we cover English, global studies, biology, and health in that 3-hour block, but not in that order, not necessarily all on that same day. The students are split into 3 houses. We have white, blue, and gold. There's about 70 students in each house, which at first hearing of that information, some parents get a little nervous because they think that it's 70 kids kind of running Lord of the Flies in one classroom. But we'll talk a little bit about how we organize those 70 kids. So there's one content area teacher per house, and then we have special ed support as well. So within the White House, I'm the biology teacher, Ben Cry is our English teacher, Steve Kujawa is our global studies teacher. Our 2 lovely health teachers kind of tag team and, pass the baton and figure out, where they can go. So they've been super flexible with having 2 of them work with the 3 houses. So if you want to, I feel bossy. So
That's okay. I don't mind.
So here, you can see this is an example schedule. So with having 70 kids in one house, what we do is we break them up. Typically, we just call the groups Alpha, Bravo, and Delta, and those will be 20 to 25 kids per group. And what's nice is that because all the kids are on our roster for 3 hours, we can break up that group however we see fit. So, the kids came in first day of school, and sometimes you have that group where you're like, oh, this isn't going to work at all. And what was really nice was you could separate those kids the next day. Sometimes you have the groups where they don't talk at all, and then that group talks way too much. And just also exposing the kids to each other and getting them to learn better from each other as well. So this is an example schedule from earlier this year. So kids already know what subgroup they're assigned to. So if a kid knows that they're in the alpha group, they just look at their schedule. The academy starts at 10:20. We don't have a thing called home base every day, but if there were some general announcements or something that everyone needed to take care of that wasn't content specific, all kids are assigned to one teacher. They go, they check in, and then the schedule is color coded and it has room numbers on it. So they know that when they see green, that's biology because frogs are green. That's just how it works in my brain, so that's what we do. And they're always going to, their global studies teacher is only in one classroom, so they know that that's where they're supposed to go. Their English teacher is in one classroom, and that's where they're supposed to go. But we can also play with these times a little bit as well. So when we were having them dissect frogs, we kept one subgroup for the whole day and just said, let's get this over with so I don't have 70 open frogs for a week in my room. And then, the other groups were in global studies or English for the rest of the day. The kids are actually, they're super flexible with this schedule. Some parents get a little intimidated when they look at it, but the kids actually ask for changes in the schedule. They get frustrated when we've been too consistent for their liking because they'll say, I don't like having the exact same class after lunch every day because then I'm tired and I tune out the first 30 minutes of whatever class it is, or I don't like always going to that person first for whatever reason it is. So the kids actually kind of like having that change, and they kind of like, when they see changes like, we're going to the auditorium today, what's happening in the auditorium? And so it's kind of fun to have that flexibility with them. I think that's all I have for this slide.
It's gotten their attention?
Yes.
Flexibility?
Yeah, for sure.
I think what's been nice about that too, like most of the time we had that home base to share schedules with the kids, but then it just got to the point where it felt like it was like kind of a waste of time. So we're like, you know what, the kids need to be responsible for everyday checking on their own. And that was a good skill that a lot of kids needed to know because they're like, oh, I just follow Peter every day, so I'm just going to follow him. But instead now it's like, oh, well, I have to do this on my own to make sure that I can do that. So not only are we trying to teach them kind of how to manage that, it's good for them to be able to do that and be responsible for doing that every day. So skills that we think the kids need to do, we're kind of just like, here you go, you got to do that. And that was one of the things that I thought that they adjusted to really, really well.
Yeah, even better than us on some days where we're like, what time? They'll remind me like, we have to go to our next class, and I'm like, do you? Are you sure that? Yeah. So yeah, they're totally on top of it.
Do you find with kind of like freeform thing that you're still able to keep track of spending enough time on each topic, or do you find that some expand and contract according to interest? Or?
For sure, there has been flexibility is kind of just the name of the game for this year because a lot of times we think it's going to go one way and it does not at all, and those things that you thought would take 15 minutes, the kids just hook onto, and then you talk about it for 45, and you didn't get through anything else, and so it's definitely been like just a day-to-day having to adjust a lot of things, and it can be a little more complicated as well working with the other contents. I remember specifically biology had to ask like, hey, can we destroy everyone's schedule for tomorrow because we're not ready to do that huge lab. And so it's more complicated in those aspects, but it's been, honestly, we're getting through the same content just in a different way, and I think it's really cool that the kids are seeing those connections, that they know that if you're not going to give Mr. Cry a paper that is hardly readable, then you can't give it to me if it's going to be in that condition. So I think that we're definitely hitting what we're supposed to hit. It's always just a game of like, what's going to come next? How are we going to do that? And it's just been, I think, definitely an experience for all of us professionally, learning how to do those things in such different ways.
Yeah, and we've been meeting 2 or 3 days a week before school to make sure that we hit our pacing as we planned. Like Jesse said, a lot of times we'll think that we're going to go in one direction and the kids take us in another direction, and we want to make sure that we give them autonomy and we let them kind of control their learning. So when that happens, we'll meet and we'll adjust, and then we'll regroup and be able to seamlessly go to to the next topic. I mean, at the beginning, and we'll talk at the end when there's a slide on reflection, but at the beginning, that's where we really kind of had challenges. But as the year's gone on, we've been able to adapt a lot better.
Has it gotten more efficient?
Yes.
Because one of the complaints of some high school kids was, I went to health and I learned about something, and then I had to go to biology and learn it about again, when if they had just put the two together, could have gotten it in one.
Yeah, for sure. I would say that we used to, in health, I figured out like my second year here, we would assign the exact same project in biology and in health. And so I realized when kids were asking me specifically for a disease, I eventually figured out, it's because you already did this project, didn't you? I think that's why, yeah. Work smarter, right? It's a life skill. I think for sure it's not only made things more efficient, but I think it's challenging them in different ways as well, because they can't approach everything from one angle only anymore. They have to approach it from all angles. So they're completing a project right now where they had to design a brand new country, and they had to consider energy, agriculture, waste, immigration policies, all of these things, and they couldn't only tackle it from an environmental standpoint, because they knew that they also had to justify, what kind of social policies were you going to put into place, and how would you justify the cost of that, and what's it going to do to the health of your citizens. And so they really had to try to think about these things and not just play the game of like, what answer do you want to hear? Because what they think I might want to hear might not be what Travis is going to ask them when they're talking about healthcare or something like that. So yeah, I do think that we're trimming some of the fat, but also adding in like more muscle. Is that legit? Okay. Yeah.
And I think the process was streamlined the further in the year that we went with the working documents that we have now. We have a regular calendar, we have a curriculum document, we come together on projects. With the work with Tony Frontier and this group, we streamlined some essential questions so we're all under the same theme. I think there's a lot of checks and balances that happened, like even last week and this week. It was pretty amazing to watch the team work around the cold days and what they had to make up and who had to do what, and so that there was no really overlap, but more like strengthening of the content and still on the same page. So I really have noticed a really big difference with that.
So speaking of assessments, so what we've gotten better at, I think, as the year goes on as well, is performance-based assessments where we're tying all the content areas together. Because a lot of times the work that kids are doing really shouldn't just be hitting a biology standard. If they're writing about something, they should probably be writing about it properly and citing their sources properly, and asking the right questions like they learn in social studies and things like that. So our last unit theme was interdependence, so we were talking about ecosystems and everything being connected. They talked about the agricultural system and policy. They were looking at analyzing the themes of interdependence in our town, a play, just a lot of things going on. And so we have them work in groups and independently or interdependently. And I think the group work has been really challenging for the kids, but it's also been, I think, really beneficial for them to understand that it's not something that's going away. We actually sat down and talked to them about group dynamics. We made them write group norms. We hold them to those norms. We told them that your solution cannot be that you just come and complain to your teacher. You need to talk things out. And there were some ugly days with some of our groups, but I've seen some groups who really came a long way. But we also have opportunities as well for kids to demonstrate their knowledge on their own, and moving away from that, can you give me 5 minutes to study so that I can spit out an answer, and more towards this this culminating, I have to produce a product. I have to be able to justify this to you. They got pulled into the hall one by one to do an interview with the health teachers, where they had to really know their material, and it was, well, you researched this. Can you actually tell me what that research was about and how that applies? So we've been working on more of those culminating things, which across 4 contents can be a challenge, but we've gotten a little creative, and I think like our mindset is shifting as a group. We're thinking about like, how does that connect from me to you, and what can we do to help you, and good stuff.
Okay, so with the grading and the credits, we're adopting a competency-based, standards-based grading system. So we've been doing that this year with the freshmen. I know that's been a hot topic with the district. They've been standards-based graded the whole year, and we're looking at proficiency towards specific standards as opposed to chasing a grade. Upon completion of this year, they'll get their English 9 credit, they'll get their bio credit, they'll get a World Studies credit, and they'll get 1/2 health credit, which is what they would have gotten in the old system. So the goal, the overarching goal, the pillars, I would say, of the Freshman Academy model, switching to this model, are to promote the following skills to the kids. Student autonomy. We want them to be able to learn what they want to learn instead of what we're just giving them. Interdisciplinary learning. Learning doesn't just happen in isolation. They're learning, like Jesse said, any English standard they can hit, they should be able to hit in biology too. Any biology standard they can hit, they should be able to write about it in English. Personalized learning. As a special ed teacher, it's been a lot easier for me to identify student needs. I have an hour with each of my students on my caseload, but it's been nice to see them in every single class that they're in and be able to work with them one-on-one, and then be able to design assessments and projects that work for everybody, not just my kids, not just general ed kids, not honors kids, but for everybody. So that's been
because
good.
that made it easier for you?
For me, I made it easier for me, yeah, personally, because I can see them, because the way I operate, and I would argue most of the special ed teachers at the high school operate, is we really do need one-on-one time with our kids, so we need that 1 hour where I can really focus. If Brenda needs help, I can really sit with her and work for an extended period of time. But then to be able to see how she functions in class, as is she really stuck on this writing, or is she just not contributing to her group? And I can watch that, and I can see, and I can really address the needs. Is it a social emotional need? Is it an actual learning need that I need to focus on with her? So yeah, for me it has been a lot easier.
And have our special ed kids integrated in this format?
Yeah, so intellectually disabled kids are in Ms. Knippel's program, but they're integrated into this program as well. So to me, it's been really nice to see them working together. This last project, we'll have I have a student on the autism spectrum that has trouble writing, so all of his assessments are oral, and he's been working with 2 other students and then 1 student in the AP Human Geography group, and they've been awesome working with him to help him lay out and organize his thoughts, so then when Travis brings him into the hall, for example, for his interview, he does a really good job with that.
He did amazing, and it was really kind of cool to see.
And that was all him working with his team, and making sure that we kind of set him up in a position to succeed, but he did all the work on his own with his teammates, and it was really.
Do you think it's because the peers are helping them? That has something to do with it?
No, I think yeah, that's definitely part of it. But I think us knowing the student needs, we can pair them with stronger or peers with specific skills, or peers that they get along with, and that will kind of not just do the work for them, So yeah, and it's helping them really build social skills also, I think. And that kind of takes us to the next pillar there, 21st century skills. So a lot of you guys either own businesses or you're business people, and when you hire students or you hire graduates, in a lot of cases you can teach them what they need to know, but you're not going to be able to instill in them a work ethic or how to be a good teammate, how to be a good partner, and that's kind of what we're trying to instill in the freshman academy. And this is the one skill that absolutely has improved this year in this model as opposed to the old model, in my opinion. I think we often get frustrated at ourselves, I think, because we're not, in the past maybe, because we provide a group project that we thought was probably like the greatest project we've ever come up with, and we'll give it to the kids, and it just doesn't go over well. This model has forced us to think of many projects, and I can't say that they've all been like top-notch, like home run successes, but we're getting a lot better at hitting the right stride. And these last few projects that they've been working on have really taught them a lot of life lessons. And of course, technology integration and application, they've been using that in every single project. They've been doing a great job. Kathy, what's the next one? So the Freshman Academy Honors Program. There is an AP Human Geography class. It's an entry-level Human Geography class. And that is grade weighted, and that prepares the kids for the test in May after their freshman year if they want to take it for college credit. Other than that, the Freshman Academy Honors Program is not grade weighted. I think this goes towards us really wanting like a 4.0 to mean a 4.0 and not, I can take a C, I can go to Ms. Tasev's AP Chem class, get a C, but it really grades out to a B plus because it's grade weighted. The honors program provides ways that the students can earn honors recognition on their own, through their own interests, instead of having to just take, I don't know, like, I'm trying to think of one. You know, just like, you know, their 6th AP history class because that's all that's left and it's the last class that has. So the way we layer this is we provide enrichment activities. They can think of their own enrichment activities. There's a passion project and there's a community service project. And the enrichment projects are often given by us but can also be thought of on their own. So one student wanted to read a series of books from Mr. Fry, and they related to interdependence. So he let them read those books and give him a presentation. I know that Ms. Berg, I just got a pretty good paper on Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
Linking interdependence into Jurassic Park. We had the students, we offered them one where they could demo the frog dissection and do a step-by-step instruction guide for how to dissect a frog. So next year we're going to show that to the freshmen before they do the dissection so that they will, you know, learn from each other, and they got honors points for that. A big source of points, something that we're trying to push, is a passion project where students will do a big project on something they're passionate about. One student is really studying the Kennedy assassination she's doing a really deep dive on that. I think her project is going to be done in March, and that will be something that's great to see. And service learning projects is the last way, and that's another big point. So we want kids involved in the community. And we have a student who had scoliosis when she was a kid, and she had the surgery to straighten her back. And now, it had such an effect on her life that now she goes back and she meets with other young people who are having that surgery and kind of guides them through their process. So she's going to write reflections on that and present a project on that, and that's going to give her service learning points. So that's how they're getting honors points. And at the end of the year, they'll have a designation on the transcript that says past freshman year. Those are overall thoughts. Like, that's kind of the what exactly are we doing and where exactly we see ourselves at the mid-year point. We're definitely improving. I would say that we're way more flexible. We're working as teachers and as kids. We're better teammates and better working as a team better. We're learning. We're not there 100% yet, but there's a lot of student-driven work. We're trying to let them hit the standards of each content area on, like, doing work of their choice. And I think that's been the hardest part for us, but I think that's been the most rewarding when we get them to take ownership of their learning. And as Jesse touched on, the kids really enjoy the change more than we thought. We thought that this was going to be a really tough adjustment, and it wasn't easy for a month, but they're really starting to get used to it now. Jesse, you can go over how we're adjusting to it.
Yeah, this obviously was very messy, and so some things that have helped along the way. Luckily, this lady, you might have heard of her, Lynn Leroy, she's really organized. And she kind of came in and said, hey, you guys need to be a lot more organized. And so we have a running agenda now for our morning meetings, and we have this really nice spreadsheet for all of our weekly plans, and we link our Google things in there, and it's basically a work of art. That helps a lot so we can see what's happening. And I think we're kind of adjusting to more of our role as like we are facilitating, and that we can kind of facilitate any aspect of things. So kids the last couple of days were working on a marketing aspect of their project. It's not a biology grade, but I'm still in there being like, okay, here's points you need to make, and here's tips I have for you, and different things like that. And I think we're becoming a little bit more familiar with each other's discipline. Obviously, we have work to do with familiarizing ourselves as well, but there will be more times where we run to each other and say like, hey, this sounds like English, and English will say, yes, that is indeed English, and we can kind of go off from there. And yeah, I think that we're definitely getting a lot better. In some ways, it's been like the first year of teaching over again, except like my classroom management is better. But in terms of, that headspace, it's kind of, there's been a little bit of like, we're just trying to stay afloat, but I think it's already a million times better than it was on day one, and I'm sure at the end of the year, we'll, feel like we're hitting home runs, and already have a lot of notes about how to better kick things off and just continual improvement, which I think is good. Everyone's just of the mindset of like, it's not about where you were being bad, it's just about tomorrow being better.
And we're able to move around so that we've been better with managing our time as professionals. So if biology needs 2 hours to kind of work through a project, I can cover bio for 2 hours, and because I know what's going on and I know the project that they're working on, or Travis can cover English, or Brenda can cover science. It's been really a lot easier for us to manage our time if that, and it does come up, so not if it comes up, but when situations like that come up, it's a lot easier for us to be flexible, and it helps us take care of issues that were unforeseen.
You guys have any questions for her?
So, the honors points, if I'm understanding it correctly, that's in addition to,
Yeah.
not in lieu of.
Correct.
So.
Oh, in addition to what? In addition to their regular work?
Correct.
Yes.
So, any thoughts of changing that and just making someone who wants an honors program, or if you have an accelerated learner, that you just make the work more challenging, not just give them more work to do?
Mm-hmm. Well, the work, yes, I understand your question. So like in two parts. So the work that they get, the extra work, is directly related to what they're doing in class. So it's kind of an extension. Also, I think the worry that I would have, and I can't speak for everybody, and I don't want to speak for anybody else, but the worry that I would have would be, then aren't we kind of just going back to leveling every single class? And why not just go back to how it was 2 years ago if that's how we're going to do it? You know what I mean? If we're going to make it a little harder for these 20 kids and really hard for these 20 kids, but kind of easy for these 20 kids, then I think we kind of miss out on what the whole model is, which is kind of to have it be accessible for everybody. So I understand your point. There's probably like an in-between, but that is best, but we're just not there right now.
I think too, the beauty is that the kids can pick which parts they're extending, so it really drives on that interest. For this project where they're designing the country, I had a kid come and start explaining to me like the cost and area calculations of planting wheat, and how many people that would feed, and then based on the size of the island and the number of nuclear power plants and the radius that you need around each nuclear power plant, and like it just went and went and went and went to the point where I had to say, this sounds like an honors project.
Right.
Let's do it later. Like, I need to do some research before, so I think,
So he ran it by us.
Yeah.
He'll get honors credit for that portion of work, and that was something because he got so motivated by the project that he kind of took it on. So, but no, it's Mr. Dry. I know exactly what you're saying. I understand. I just don't have the.
Well, I like it that you are, when you spoke, all of you said we and us. There weren't a lot of I. So you are working as a team.
Well, I think that's been the biggest benefit for me is that as a health teacher, where the old health classroom was, I felt very, very isolated on it. And this has really allowed me to get to know all these people a lot more and actually work with them and kind of know like how, because I'm kind of a floater as I don't have a classroom for the freshman academy, because it's just Rachel and I. But it's been really, really nice for me to help kids and for me to just say, I know Miss Bergad, like, let me try to figure this out for you, because maybe she's not understanding what you're thinking, but I have a really good relationship with you, so I can help you through that. And I think that's been a really big benefit, but, it's been great to actually, like, work in, like, the other day I was in Rob Heiduck's room, and Peter walks in, and Rachel walks in, and it's really nice to be able to have that flexibility, and for me to be able to work with these other people to try to improve the learning of other kids, and I think that that's been something that's really beneficial, and especially even for the special ed aspect, where he was talking about the one student, it's like, well, this kid may not be very good at writing, but he came out and he did this oral presentation, and he freaking nailed it, like knocked it out of the park. And I think that that's been a really, really good thing, is that we're able to do different things with kids to try to bring out the learning that's best for them.
and I think the kids are starting to see us as a team as well, which is cool in that I think they feel more supported in a lot of ways. Because now, when we're all working together, it's, yes, let me clarify that with Mr. Cry for you, because I'm not sure exactly what was said here, or if we have concerns about kids, we're always getting together as a team and saying, is this just my class? Is it across the board? What can we do? What have you found that works? Communicating with parents as a team, I think has been really great. Being on the same page in terms of, are we all clear? Who's assessing what? Where does it go? What should it be called? Does everyone know where the rubric is? And I think it's held us more accountable to each other, and it's really just benefited the kids in a lot of ways. But I feel like we just have a really good vibe with each other and the kids.
I think students are comfortable going to multiple places for assistance also, so they're not just always asking one teacher or comfortable asking one teacher for help. I think they're comfortable going to at least everybody in their house for help with any topic.
And is it staffed properly, and do you have the right amount of resources?
I would say if we had the choice, or if we had to do it all over again, I would add a third special ed teacher. Right now there's two, and there's 3 houses. I think that we could use a third in that third house, but we didn't know what to expect. So when the schedule was done, we didn't really anticipate needing more than 2 teachers, but I think it would really help. So Jesse's house has a instructional aide who's a retired teacher who's very capable and very good. But I think if she had, and you can speak for yourself, but I think if she had somebody who works with the kids outside of the freshman academy, in the freshman academy with her, it might be beneficial.
Yeah.
But I
would say the same in the health aspect too, just because it's very, very difficult to schedule them, because, I mean, if Rachel and I are teaching something in the Gold House and the Blue House, now we have to wait a separate day to teach it, either team teach it together on the next day, and then it kind of really screws up the flow of what everybody else is doing at the same time. But I mean, obviously, like, we make it work, and, Peter's been a big help, and so is Becca, but in those aspects, it is very difficult, because then we have to try to schedule around how we can make sure that all the kids are getting all that. I mean, it's very good, because it's been really nice for me to collaborate with Rachel and to actually like team teach with somebody else. But I would say that that's been a struggle for us, is the health aspect, only having 2 of us as well.
But again, those are those are kind of issues that we wouldn't have foreseen prior to, you know.
Well, and I think ideally we would love it if you could rebuild a separate building for the freshman academy. That would be awesome. So that all of our, but just logistically, we're teaching some kids to walk a little quicker, going from all the way from Brenda's room down to the furthest science room, and so what I just gathered is we have the money, right?
Yeah.
For the contingency.
Right. I heard there was a contingency fund.
So my last thing is, the student that's doing the Kennedy,
Yeah.
if they figure out the conspiracy, please have them report back to us.
She won't have to do any more honors things. She'll get all 20 points.
Right to it, man.
Honors points for life.
Right.
It's like a flat.
Exactly.
I just want to say thank you for all the work you've put in and just being agile and flexible with everything that's been going on, because it's a big change, and obviously we didn't know what we were going to get into when the year started, and obviously it keeps changing as the year goes on, but your efforts that you're putting in are really making the difference, and I think, as you said, the students can see the difference. They're more enthusiastic about what they're doing, and I think it is going to make a major difference in how we bring our freshmen into the school.
If you had a child from 8th grade, if your child was going, would you like this model for them?
We do have a child in middle school, and it's wonderful for me to be a part of this, and I secretly help and foster this program because I know my kids can come up through it, and I love it because it does build a camaraderie, but I think the best part of it is the crossover aspect, like how life is. Life is full of math, full of reading, all together, not like an hour of math, an hour of your day is not structured like that. And so the freshmen get to really experience that. Like in English, they took a science nonfiction text and read it in English and did a close read, and then gave it back to science, and then they synthesized research, and then went back to English and wrote the paragraph. And I just thought that was such a powerful learning experience, because that's really how life is.
Well, and just one last thing about that is we're kind of getting towards the conclusion of our project, and we're having some kids kind of like a marketing campaign or a video together. And Rachel and I have gone in the library today, and one of the ladies in the library said, there's this group of 4 kids that have been here since 11:15. Like, shouldn't they be accounted for? And we go in there, and they are just bustling and working on this project together, which is like, you have some kids in there that you probably wouldn't want to leave in a room alone for more than 15 minutes, but here they are working together as a group of 4 or 5, and they're just working on this project together. And like, honestly, they didn't even need a teacher in there directing them as to which way that they should go. But it's really cool to, after, talking like, oh, what are you guys working on? Or how's it going? Oh, it's going good. We just gotta get this done. And I'm like, all right, we'll let you be. We'll keep working with us. Let us know if you have any questions. I think that was kind of a really cool thing. We can just have kids work on this project and be so proud of it. Like, hey, this is the way we're doing it. This is really good.
I some kids not go to lunch. Like the bell rings and they're just like coloring their maps. Guys, you gotta go. Nope, I'm good. Okay. Close the door and leave.
It's going to get better as time goes on.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Okay, great. Now, item B is legislative letter. So we got that out. Did anyone have any questions about it? Where is, I don't see that.
It's in the-
So Lisa, how do we get these to the individual?
Yep. So the, what lobbyists or the legislative aides will tell you is so we have, this is at the top of the letter is just general, but we have each of the addresses and what suite they're in. So the recommendation would be to address it individually to each of our senators and representatives and email it. They say do not snail mail it.
Really?
Yeah. So That would be the recommendation with a appropriate email subject line so it doesn't get lost in the whatever it is. But this one is pretty much, isn't specific to a piece of timely legislation, so they give us some things in that, but that's what they would tell you, yes.
And you will do that, or we will do
Yep,
that?
nope, so in terms of we would do that in terms of what the questions are, so we can either, I think Kathy has everybody's digital signature to add to it since it goes via email, so if there weren't any questions to it, we would appropriately address it, and then it would go to each of them in terms of what that looks like. Typically what they'll tell you is if there is a piece of legislation that is timely and they're wanting feedback on it, they usually set up to call them because they have a phone bank that they literally are like, where, and then they sit and they tally and they record it. But that's also dependent upon the legislator too. They can tell you which ones are like, compared to that. But the email, because you can check it 24/7, it's a lot easier by the time it gets to the Capitol, especially if you have timely legislation, and they go through all the security to check all the mail that comes in there, it takes a lot longer to get there, so yep.
Anyone else have any questions on it?
Just thank Quinn for
Yeah.
really bringing it to the forefront and putting it out there. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. All right, so that's it. So then we'll move on back to 6, discussion and future action items. A is spring break 2020 trip to England. Forget again.
Hello. So yes, I'm Mrs. Burgett, and I teach English. This trip is something that we used to do every other year, and I did stop going due to family commitments. So I decided that I was going to take some time off, but we take the kids overseas to a place where they can actually speak English. And it's still such a cultural experience for them and such a wonderful experience. And it's been great for the kids who have gone in the past. And so I thought I'd try to resurrect it again.
What is the educational piece? 'Cause
It's
like you said, we go over and speak English, so that's the language.
right, absolutely. Culture. This is called a literary trip, and so we are going to Bath, and basically you go and see a lot of castles, you learn historical concepts, you learn about the people who wrote our first literature, and then Stratford-upon-Avon, go to talk about William Shakespeare, and of course we do Shakespeare in the classes here, and just to see where he lived and to see what he experienced and to feel what he felt is such an awesome way for kids to feel that. And if they're into reading and they're into literature, also in Bath actually there's a Jane Austen Center, and she's also a favorite of a lot of people. So there's just so many different literary elements that the kids would learn, and the tours that we go on a lot of times talk about the authors and what they experienced and why they wrote the way that they did, and you get the whole historical concept of it, which is really nice. Instead of just being able to give them a book in my classroom, I can explain the history, but you can actually feel and live the history when you go there.
What age groups do you focus on this for?
I'm looking at juniors and seniors. I feel as if they're more mature and more ready for a trip like this. We usually offered it every other year, and so the juniors and seniors would have a chance to be able to do that. Then opposite the French trip, because the French trip is this year. So it's nice to have them opposite years too, just in case they do want to go to a place where they can have an in-home experience and speak in another language.
Is this the same tour company as we use for the other ones?
It is. I used a different one the last time I went and found that this one definitely the hotels are centrally located. The tour guides are so much better. Everything felt more safe and put together and organized with this tour company, and that's why I went back to it.
I think these trips are an amazing opportunity for our students, and anybody who can participate, I think they would get really a lot out of it. I haven't been to England. I've been to other places in Europe. I haven't been to England. And it's amazing, the history and, you know, that they really learn. So I think it's a great thing, and thank you for doing that.
So my daughter was able to benefit from the French trip a couple years ago, and it was an amazing experience. But the concern that I have with this one was that there doesn't appear to be any help offered for someone who might have difficulty coming up with the finances to go, but would really want the experience. I could not have sent my daughter to France if there hadn't been some mechanisms to make it a little more financially affordable. And the idea that she would have missed out on that kind of experience would have been really difficult. And I'm glad that we were able to have that kind of assistance, but I'm not seeing those mechanisms in this trip. So what can be done to make it affordable for someone who would really want to go and could benefit, but can't afford the price tag?
Right. There are definitely, I would definitely have to talk to the athletic director more, or the activities director more, and find out what kinds of fundraising we could do. But if the parents and the kids are interested in doing fundraising, I'm definitely up for helping them put that together. We've done, I know 1 year, actually 3 years, we did a cookbook. And that one usually turns out really well because the cookbook comes out right before Thanksgiving, and then people give them as gifts. So we do like a whole, anybody from any of the schools can submit recipes, and we put that together and then sell that, and that's been a really good one. But
with the deadlines coming up, my concern is that if someone didn't see that there were some mechanisms available, they wouldn't even apply, and then they'd miss deadlines to even apply to go on the trip.
Oh, I see what you mean.
For next year.
That they'd be discouraged from even attempting to ask if they didn't know that there might be some assistance available.
So then at a meeting, I would have to check it out first and make sure that I can actually go ahead and do some of those fundraising items. Definitely.
Anybody else have any questions? All right, thank you for your time
Okay.
putting this together. Thank you. Okay, then we'll go on to B, sponsorship tier package with Dave Pentek.
Good evening, everybody. I hope you were able to get the packet that was sent to you. First, before I start, this is just a prototype. By no means is this the way we have to move forward if this is what we want to do. If it's something that we just want to completely throw away and start from scratch, I'm more than willing to work with a group of people and try to find something that's going to meet the needs of the district. This was based off of a template that a different school district utilized that was guided towards myself, saying this is something that our district would potentially be interested in. But by no means is this a hard set. This is the way it has to be. So I guess I'm kind of just going to open it up to questions. You can kind of see it's pretty self-sufficient with the purpose and the procedures and the process and so forth. So what can I do for you?
Sure. So you used a template from a different district, and you used everything that was on there, I take it, because it seems pretty encompassing.
I used majority of it, yes.
And where did you get the pricing?
Those are just made up. So, I mean,
okay.
Well, some of the pricing is from there, and I took it significantly, actually lowered it.
Really?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah,
So
actually.
heavy loads in there.
Yeah, But you also have to realize that it's over a long period of time.
Right.
So a 20-year commitment, the district prior had a 30-year commitment for $500,000 for naming rights. They had a $750,000 naming right of their Performing Arts Center. We don't have a Performing Arts Center. So again, these numbers are just numbers. I need a little guidance of exactly where the district is sitting on some of these things. Because again, over a 20-year period, for naming rights of our football field or our stadium, $20,000 a year, is that a lot? Is that not a lot? It could be, it might not be. It's all on how we feel as a district. So
Someone's willing to pay for it.
exactly. So obviously the gymnasium can be higher because there's more events that are going through it with graduation and all the different basketball games and so forth, if that is something that we wanted to do. But there are a lot of little things involved too, where along with the prices comes program acknowledgement, announcement acknowledgement, all these little tiny things that come with it as well. So does the sponsor get worth their while? It's all what they feel is appropriate and what we feel is what we want to do with it.
So these places that you've talked to, these 30-year, $500,000 agreements, are they getting people to actually purchase these things, or is that just what they have in their policies? Because I'm just wondering if $20,000 a year, it seems when you break it down that way a little more reasonable. When you're putting it out for 20 years, it seems to be a heavy commitment on both sides. Are there schools that already have these type of commitments from businesses or individuals or anything like that going on now?
There are some. I have not found the big hitters quite yet, except for I believe it is Acuity, which is up in Sheboygan.
Okay.
Acuity would be they put their name on pretty much every single gym in the North Shore, the Washington County, Sheboygan County. They are a heavy hitter. They wanted to put their name on every single field house in the 30-mile radius of basically their company. Can there be big companies like Kohl's? Maybe Kohl's wants to jump in on board, American Family. Obviously now with the new naming rights of the new ballpark, Miller Park and so maybe they will. I have been touched by bigger corporations. I know Holtz Motors is not as large as Acuity, but Holtz Motors has contacted me and said they would like to do some type of sponsorship. Now, they did not see this. I said, hold off before we do anything. They might shy away when they see something like this. I don't know. But American Family reached out to me. Children's Hospital of Wisconsin, reached out to me. So there are some bigger corporations that are out there that are interested. They just kind of want to know what we are willing to offer, and I said we just needed to hold off until the district decided what they wanted to do.
Muskego has their gym, their football field is
After the big...
they do floors.
Yes, and that company literally has the name on the field, name on the press box. The amount that person donated was very large.
I mean, they're headquartered right there.
Yep. Exactly.
I can't come up with the name, but.
I just saw it actually where it was on a presentation.
The advertisements aren't working.
Maybe we shouldn't say that. Oh yeah, that one.
Impro, yes.
See? Yeah, if you knew.
All right, so to your question, is everyone comfortable with a 10-year or 20-year time period or commitment? Obviously the businesses will dictate if they want to agree to it, but are we comfortable with even offering that?
I think that's a question. I think the other question is, and I won't use the language I usually use with this, but are we willing to sell all this stuff?
Yeah.
Are we willing to put all this out for inventory?
And this is nostalgia hitting me, I would have a very, very difficult time thinking of Classroom 112 being all of a sudden the painting in classroom. Turning us into a naming rights venue and, selling it, that would not be something I could be comfortable with.
You would suggest, and I guess I wish we go through line item and say what we're comfortable with.
Yeah. And I guess as far as the time commitment, that kind of goes back to a discussion that we had had about the scoreboard and the income from that and how long that commitment was going to be. And I don't know if there's been any additional problems with that now that we're that many years removed from it, and are we still getting an income stream? Is it still working out for all the parties? Because that was one of the first long-term advertising type commitments the district had ever gotten into that had bigger dollar figures.
And where does this, what fund or where does this money go? If
That advertising goes to Fund 10. What we're talking about here is in essence a donation. We'll be treating that out of Fund 21. And what that means is the dollars are set aside and segregated for the specific purpose of the donor. The donor, in this instance, would be able to dictate how they want to see the dollars spent if it's a true donation.
So part of the application process is they have to choose, the applicant has to choose, and I want to make sure I use the correct wording. It would be called reserved or unreserved. So the applicant can choose if that reserved money would be reserved for, say, the football field or football team or that sport or the English department or whatever they are truly sponsored, or they would mark it as unreserved where they can still choose to have the sponsorship in a certain location, but it's not reserved for this one location, and it kind of goes to the entire district as how they feel deemed necessary.
And does it affect our income from the state? Does it affect our income from the state or anything? This is outside?
No, it's outside. Yeah, it's outside.
I mean, I think there's a lot of things listed here. The chance of us having all of these met is probably slim, right? I mean, we're
Correct.
starting
This is just
here.
just examples.
So I mean, I think
yes.
if we got to 1/10 of this, it would probably be a win for us at this point, right? So I get every classroom not wanting that, but I don't think we're looking at that. I mean, maybe the band room is or something like that, but I don't know. That's just my thought, especially as we get it running. What, you don't think that's?
Well, again,
Oh,
that's
sure.
where nostalgia's getting in the way. I don't like the idea of naming rights in high school.
Well, one thing that you can look at, we're talking about what price do you want to make. Maybe what we need to do is kind of figure out how much does it cost to run the stadium for the year? How much money do we put into upkeep of the gym for the floor treatment and all that? And set the sponsorship according to that. And if someone wants to sponsor it and pay for the utility over a 5-year period, you get your name on it. And that kind of makes it freer in our budget to do other programs, and someone supporting us with something that's you can physically point to and say this is what the money went to. Maybe that would give us more of a comfort level with it. You've got a gym in every school, you've got the stadium. You could kind of look at some things that way and kind of say, does that make sense? Because I kind of feel like we're not sure what we want to do, but if we're trying to do something to supplement our budget, that would seem a way of doing it that doesn't price out like Holtz Motors or someone local to us who wants to be part of our community but not get priced out of it and do something meaningful for the school district.
And what do you do if they want to reserve something, they want to use that reserve for something else other than what we,
The donations have to be accepted. I mean, anything over $1,000, the board has to accept. So whether that goes maybe to a committee first, as I think it's alluded to.
In the process, it would have to be
process.
approved by the sponsorship committee.
But it's also something that we offer, like, oh, okay, if you want to, help us out, these are opportunities, and this is what the money would go to. So you don't have to give them free will, or they could say, you know what, I'd rather just make a $1,000 donation to the school. I mean, they have that option. But you could we could be more directive with what we want to do if that makes us more comfortable.
Thoughts on that, Dave?
I honestly, I feel that it'd be great for us to, as maybe a group or have a committee to sit down, because I love putting these things together and I want to do what's in the best interest of the district. Right now, I feel like I'm presenting something and it's a little all over the place of not knowing exactly what we want. Whereas maybe if we could get a committee together that has some other ideas, then we can narrow it down and come back to a real proposal of this is what we as a committee decided to move forward with. That's my idea. Otherwise, I feel like we could kind of be going back and forth forever.
Nancy, go ahead.
I mean, you know, getting extra money is always a good thing, right? I'd have a really hard time, though, naming our Falcon Field something different, because I think that we lose our identity with that. So if somebody wants to name the press box, or they want to put their name on the scoreboard, I'm good with that,
That's the nice thing about it. We can create whatever we wanted to do for the
Right.
district. We can take the stadium out completely, we could take just the press box, we could get rid of this entire thing and start from scratch. It's a unique thing. I was guided towards this other school district, and I kind of went off of that, and I'm hearing different
This is
things.
the whole enchilada right here, right?
Yeah, it is.
This is everything, yeah.
So I think this is pretty, to me, this is pretty outside the box. As Stephanie's alluding to, I don't know if I've been in many districts yet where we're naming the science wing after somebody in the community. There's some pretty good hot spots, though, that we could start with. It might be the press box, it might be around a scoreboard, and just see what kind of interest there is in the community, and then you go from there and start to kind of, you gotta start smaller than this, as Quinn is saying, not one bite instead of the whole enchilada.
Right. I mean, I'd be good with having an emblem on the one shoulder of the football uniforms or something on the basketball uniforms, but, you know, like.
Right.
Or even
Yeah,
like
yeah.
the windscreens on the tennis courts or the dugouts.
Right, something
And
like that.
these
but-
dollar amounts, these are daunting dollar amounts, and you might have somebody looking at this and going, this is almost just too big to even begin with, like, what is Whitnall doing, you know, with something like.
We're Whitnall.
We're Whitnall.
Come on.
So I think starting smaller than this, I think what we can do with this is if we, to me, this would be a great finance and facilities committee meeting if you want to pull this together, where you're talking obviously dollars and cents. You can take a look at the entire district facilities and start to go, all right, where are our hot spots? Let's highlight those areas. And now let's get specific about, to Stephen's point, all right, what would this, putting some sponsorship around a scoreboard, what are we really trying to get accomplished with those dollars? And can it then free up dollars elsewhere in our budget, and what kind of time commitment? So this is, I think, is a great menu for us to start from.
So what if we try for a finance facilities meeting in March?
Yeah.
Just me and you?
Well, Jonathan's there. Dave would be here. Mike would be there.
Yeah.
Todd would come.
Obviously, all board members.
Anybody, board members
Yeah.
can attend.
And
right, in
ideally,
Bridgeport.
all board members would, so that we can have a full discussion.
And public. The public
Yeah.
can join.
So why don't we look at the dates in March? Does that work? Is that time enough for you?
I will make it work, yeah. I don't know exactly what you would like me, we can discuss it
Yeah,
in
we'll
the
discuss
future,
it
what we
offline.
would like
We'll
me to
hash
bring, but I
that
can
out.
make it work.
Yeah. Okay, instead of trying to squeeze something in this month,
Mhm.
we can plan ahead for
And
March.
Mike and I can get together and kind of hash it out and give it a little bit better of a format so that you've got a better idea.
Yep.
Tell those sponsors to wait
What
in
will
line.
look- yeah.
And they're waiting
Yeah.
patiently. So,
Okay, thank
but
you.
I apologize if I was off.
Oh,
No,
I didn't
no, you
necessarily-
gave us a great starting point. I think it opened up a lot of possibilities, and I think it makes us kind of look back and say, okay, what do we want to do? Because without even knowing where to start from, I think we'd just be lost.
Yeah,
So-
yeah, this is real. I mean,
No, this is
someone put
perfect.
this out there. I
Yeah.
mean, it's.
No, it's good.
I know this
it's
took a
for
lot
real.
of time and effort, so thank you for putting all
No,
that
thank
into
you.
it. And-
Definitely appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we'll have a meeting in March and we can go over this. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
And if anyone would like specific information for that meeting, get it to us ahead of time so we can send it to Mike and Dave.
Send it over.
So they can try to prepare ahead of time so we have the answers
Yes,
during the
please.
meeting. Okay?
Sounds good.
All right.
Thank you
Thanks,
again.
Dave. Okay, C is June 2016 educator pay adjustments.
Well, I'm gonna go up and talk. Yeah, I'm gonna go up and talk. Sorry. All right. So I wanted to address with the board something that has been on our mind for quite a while, and before I get into the actual crux of what we've been dealing or taking a look at, I do want to give you some background because I can't help myself by taking a moment to educate and inform.
I think it was
So,
an eye roll.
so that was an eye roll. That was off camera. I hope not. That's right on camera. So, Kevin, you can get into the presentation. I'm going to boss you around.
All right.
I'm not going to feel bad like Jess did.
Don't feel bad.
So, what we're dealing with right now, and I don't think it's unique to Whitnall in any sense, is we essentially right now have three different historical compensation models kind of coming together. We all know that prior to 2011, basically everywhere it was the salary schedules were in place. And what I have up here is these types of compensation models, in essence, that correspond with revenue increases that we got from the state in each of these years. So pre-2011 was pretty consistent as far, now it doesn't look consistent up there, I'll explain that in a second, but was pretty consistent in seeing additional dollars year after year, anywhere between $200 and $300 per pupil consistently. And those dollars were put into the revenue limit formula. And why that's important is if you look up there in 07, 08, 08, 09, 10, 11, 11, 12, each of those 4 years, we had declining enrollment, yet you still saw revenue increases in each of those years, except in 10, 11. So a very rare situation now where you would see declining enrollment and still have additional revenue going into your school district. So while those years before that you'd see much more bluer bars rising up out of that zero category, but this is what was able to support a salary schedule like the ones that were essentially everywhere across the district. Was even in years of declining enrollment, you could count on, in this instance, almost $500,000 of additional revenue in a particular year. You'll notice there's a pretty big outlier along our continuum here of revenues. So in 11-12, in coinciding with Act 10, right? Act 10 wasn't what decreased revenues. It was the budget that year that decreased revenues. And so in 11-12, our district saw a little over $1.6 million loss in that particular year. And this is when, in essence, all across the Wisconsin, you would saw salary schedules being frozen, eliminated, changed, whatever the case is, condensed. And Whitnall was no different in that instance, in which you couldn't support the jumps in the salary schedule from year to year or from column to column, if you could picture that in your head. And really, you're looking at the reason why. There's another $270,000 decrease in revenue in 12-13. And then minor increases all the way through this time, through 2016, 17 into that year. And so during that time frame, I tried to line up each of these different salary pieces with the revenues that kind of corresponded with each of the different pieces here. In 16, 17, we started to look at what micro-credential system would look like. That focused more on professional development. Before that, compensation committees would get together, try to hash something out to figure out what if we can create a new compensation model, what does that look like? And out of that compensation committee, more than actually having a model, was a different checklist. That if we could create a model, we'd want to do this, 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 and this. And so administration and learning coaches at the time took that and created what we have now, which is the micro-credential compensation model. And now you see the revenues kind of corresponding with that as well. We've seen now an uptick in revenues, predominantly due to our increase in membership. So unlike 07, 08, and 08, 09, when membership was decreasing, we're actually seeing membership increasing now, which is why you see that blue line. The state, in and of itself, is about half of that blue line. The increase in membership would be the other half, in case you're keeping track at home. So from 2010 to 2019, this is the first year in 18-19 where we're back above 2010 revenue levels. So 9 years later, we're back now where we were in 2010. All right. Which over the course of 9 years means we've increased our revenue a grand total of 0.5%. And yet each of those years we've seen inflation, we've seen increased costs, we've seen increases in wages and all those pieces. So while we've seen inflation rise 15%, our revenue 0.5%, inflation's risen 15 or 30 times faster than our costs are. And now we're back to 2010 levels. Kathy, if you could go to the next slide. So I wanted to...
Where does the tools of Act 10 come in?
So the tools of Act 10, Kathy, if you go back, is the idea was we've got this budget, and we're going to shrink revenue limits, and in coinciding with a budget decrease, we're going to have the quote-unquote tools, which was having educators, all public school employees, pay half of their WRS, and then indexing the most amount that unions can ask for an increase to CPI. In other words, essentially eliminating the bargaining unit. And thus that would allow districts to unilaterally act on health insurance, to go out and get more competitive quotes instead of using what was predominantly WA Trust at the time. It opened up the marketplace to more. So you had two different acts. You had the budget in it, which was one piece, and then the corresponding Act 10 to provide the quote-unquote tools.
So that's run its course?
In what?
As far as generating income and costs?
We can continue, as far as WRS is concerned, you've probably run your cost. You've probably made those up. You've probably implemented other things and used those dollars up in different ways within the budget already. Health insurance and those items, those can continually change, where if you needed to do things differently without a bargaining agreement or without a bargaining unit, you can act unilaterally on those changes. That's what you're asking, to save on potential costs when it needs to be. So the bizarre part that we're kind of dealing with right now is you've got these three different time periods, these three different ways in which we've compensated people all together now at one time and kind of commingling with each other. So those three circles are all one, right? You've got employees who have been a part of all three of these circles, where there was the pre-Act 10 salaries, where it was years of service and education, and you could make massive jumps in your compensation based on years of service and your education levels. You then have maybe individuals who entered in 2011, 2012, even maybe a few years before that, 09 and 10, when maybe there wasn't enough time to go get that master's, to go get enough credits to jump across, in which they've only seen those inflationary increases, and now they've entered the micro-credential compensation model. And people who've entered the workforce really teaching in the last 2 or 3 years here at Whitnall, you've gotten an increase at least in the base salary, which the board took care of really in 15, 16, 16, 17 in that time frame by raising that up, and then now are using the initial educator increase, and also now starting to enter into the micro-credential system, in which you can see some increases in wages. But all three of these are mingling together, and it's creating an interesting dynamic. But what is most jumping out in some of the data that we're looking at is this group that came in this time period of 2011 and 2016, in between really compensation models. One that was very difficult to maintain, to sustain over time, but yet gave people increases. A micro-credential model where if you do take advantage of it, we've seen increases as much as $2,500, $3,000 a year when you're doing the micro-credentials and really hitting it hard. But those 2011 to 2016 educators, in which the lower part of the base weight, the starting salary wasn't where it was yet. There was minimum CPI or salary increases into the schedule, And then there was an attempt, if you go to the next slide, Kathy, there was an attempt in 16-17 to kind of readjust those salaries, but there may have been a group that was left behind through that process. And I just want to talk about that a little more. So this is just a summary of those increases on a year-to-year basis. Really in 11-12 and 12-13, this idea of using CPI was not really fully grasped yet, and that could be why some of these increases are smaller. In 11-12, you had a $1.6 million decrease in revenue. You couldn't really do much than 1.5%. Same thing in 12-13, there was another $300,000 loss in revenue. There's only so much that could be done. And even in 13-14 and 14-15, you had years of flat revenues, yet there was 2% increases, and in 14-15, above and beyond what was quote-unquote required. And I don't want to say required, it's not required, what was asked for by the bargaining unit. In 15-16 was the first time it appears that there was an increase given, yet dollars were kind of placed a little differently. There seemed to be more of an emphasis on putting dollars towards the base wage, and so dollars weren't allocated evenly across all the different areas. And then in 16-17 we saw a huge restructuring where CPI that year, the most the bargaining unit could ask for were increases of 0.12%, because that's what inflation was the previous year. The board gave increases of 2% on base wages, and as you know, I think everybody may have been a part of that at the time except Stephen, that really went towards raising that base wage up for individuals from $40,000 to $42,500. Those who were sitting at $40,000 got essentially a 7.5% increase to $43,000. And then there was, if you go to the next slide, Kathy, there was particular groups of educators who were banded up not by years of service, but by how they fell on a salary schedule. And they were given slowly less and less of a raise, all the way from that 7% that we saw down to 1.16, and then anybody above 45,558 received a $700 flat increase. And so it appeared that the clear emphasis was on raising that base wage, using the majority of those dollars in order to reallocate towards a starting salary, which has been much more competitive with the area. We're finding that as well. I think districts are trying to catch up to Whitnall as far as what our starting salary is. So we did a good job in being competitive in that way. There was a group, though, that appears may not have been, I don't want to say treated in the same way, but that there's certainly a group of educators who may have been, quote unquote, left behind in this restructuring. In other words, think about right now when we look at UAI. UAI has spent somewhere around from $500 to $700 on a yearly basis, just the UAI before micro-credentials. In that 16-17 restructure, we put those salary bands about $250 apart. So you could see where, for example, a teacher who came in 2011, where they're looking over the course of 8 years, here's how far I've moved up the salary schedule, when there wasn't a model in place for them to catch up yet. There wasn't a micro-credential model for them to take additional micro-credentials. They were at the whim of simply CPI or negotiations. Does that make sense, kind of what I'm saying? And let me show it to you in a visual. So this is looking at just the teachers in their first 10 years of total experience. This isn't just Whitnall experience. This is total years in the profession. And so what you're looking at is I took those educators with our own data and looked at their total years of experience and grouped them up and took their average salary in each of those years of service bands, right? Let's just focus on 2 through 8 right now. And so the difference between the average salary with educators who are in their second year versus their third year versus their fourth year, you can kind of see how it's kind of wavering all over the place. It's relatively short in nature. And all of a sudden you get to pre-2011 educators in years 9 and 10. The difference between a year of service is over $3,500 and $4,000. So you can see the difference in a visual of what's happening here pre and post 2011. And the question that I guess I have for the board is, do we want to take a look at this and try to standardize that group, that 2011 to 2016 group, a little more than what we're seeing up here? So for example, Kathy, if you just go to the next slide, this is what we would foresee, for example, if the micro-credentials had been in place from the very beginning, right, from 2011. Pretend we were all on board with micro-credentials in 2011. So for example, if you're a second and third year educator, you know you're getting that $1,000 increase, so that's going to be the difference in the average salary from 0 to 1 and 1 to 2 and 2 to 3. We saw that no matter what your total years of experience were in the district, if you did micro-credentials, the average increase for an educator from one year to the next was roughly $1,470. So it didn't matter on your years of experience. If you had another year with the district, you'd have another chance to do micro-credentials and be that much further along in your salary than somebody who was here 1 year less than you. Not because just of your total years of service, but because you had a greater opportunity to take more micro-credentials. And so if you take that 1476 and you just say no matter what year you're in, this is the average, you're going to see more of a standard difference from year to year in these salaries. You can't change years 9 and 10. Those are in stone. Those are up to the salary schedules. That will be the outlier no matter what, and we don't have those same revenues as we did in those years either, or historically those sorts of revenues. So this would be maybe what a more standardized spread of dollars might look like versus, Kathy, we just go back one, versus this jagged difference between these years. And what I'm getting at is, does the board want to take, does the board want me to take a look and see what we can do for individuals in that 2011 to 2016 time frame to try to standardize that a little more, to get a little more up to market? Where this is coming from is, we've noticed this from the beginning, from 2016 on, but as we get salary review requests, which we've kind of implemented, they typically tend to be the educators in this world, in their 1 to 8 years of experience, who didn't have, I wouldn't even say 1 to 8, it's really that 3 to 8, 4 to 8, 4 to 5 year chunk from 2011 to 2016, where the years of service were the dominant factor. The difference in their pay from 1 year to the next is very tight, and there seems to be not a clear necessarily rhyme and reason for the increases in that 4 to 8 year total experience time frame. And so my question is, given some of these variables, or given some of these factors, do you want to take the time to take a look at this and see if there's something we can't put together for these individuals in this range of time?
So Mike, can you give an example, because I think that would help.
Sure, yeah, I feel like I'm all over the
So
place.
give a couple examples that we deal with on a daily basis of, like that can't be right. Like, we have a teacher who's been here for 9 years is making X, we have a teacher who's in their second year is making X. How can that teacher ever catch up even if they're on that same model?
Yeah, there's a lot of that. So I think when we initially looked in 2016 at restructuring these base salary, the early salaries, there wasn't any years of service attached to anything. It was just simply banding people up in salaries. And so we don't always know maybe why they were placed at a particular point, because after 2011, you didn't have to place somebody, you could place anybody anywhere you wanted on the salary schedule. And so while you might have banded up individuals in a salary, it didn't take into account at that time years of service. So we can have somebody in year 8 making $46,000, yet we're bringing on educators at $43,500. And so I understand where we are now with our compensation model, where years of service is not the player, is not the driver. But from 2011 to 2016, it was. And so we're trying to now get back into a mindset of, if we had to look at this again from 2011 to 2016, where years of service was the dominant factor, would there be something that we would do slightly different and standardize that a little more, and get maybe a year 8 teacher who's making 46 and a year 1 teacher who's making 43.5, create a little greater spread in essence in their salaries.
So are you asking if we should even out those bands of 4 through 8 through the use of micro-credentialing? And that's how we get those bands more even?
I'm not sure how that would look, so no, I'm not asking that. I'm asking to go back into for this particular purpose, to go back into a years of service mindset, because that's what raises at that time were based on.
So for just this group?
For just this group.
What would be your target point to even it out at?
So,
Dollar amount, and how much would it take?
well, the question is, do you want me to study that? In essence, do you want me to come forward with the dollar amount? So, if you had individuals who were with this district in 2015-16 and they were making $40,000, they got to jump up to 43, and so that was a 7.5% increase. You had at that time maybe a 4th-year teacher who may have gotten 1.6 or somewhere in that range. And so what happened is those differences tightened up really quick, really fast. And so we have several educators who go through the process of saying, well, wait a second, this is my 8th year. I know what the starting salary is. I know where I'm at. How did this happen? When I can look across and see somebody in year 10 making almost $8,000 to $10,000 more, right? And only 2 years of experience when that's what we were focused on. Kathy, can you go to the last slide? So this is a completely different, I want to be really clear, this is a completely different, it's hard to see. This is a completely different track than what we're on, right? This is our dominant focus now, moving forward, is professional growth, micro-credentials. This is the focus of the district. We're jumping back in time right now to try to eliminate this gap, this particular issue, so that everyone feels like they're starting at a point that is equitable, and that we can kind of put that time frame behind us and move on with just micro-credentials, just focusing on professional growth. However, if there's not if you have more background on that time period, if you have, for example, Stephanie, you're saying, are we trying to catch them up with micro-credentials in a different way? If there's something different, for my purposes, I want to know, is it worth smoothing out that line in some particular way and taking a look at what that may cost or what some ideas might be in which to handle that particular group of educators?
So you're kind of looking at a one-time adjustment to
Yes.
go back to that year of
Yes.
service, not continue them on another track.
Correct. It is a one-time adjustment to say this is your base. This is it. This is the base. And we're all on board. We're all micro-credentialing. We're all doing that. But this would be, in essence, a restructure part 2.
So when we moved to 40 as a base, we had the whole discussion as far as moving everybody out incrementally to keep a similar distance and to keep that range kind of what it was, but moving everybody up accordingly. Is it just that it wasn't revisited when we went up to 42.5 and 43.5, where we did it initially when we went up to 40 from the 38 that we had?
So maybe. I mean, the 42 to 43. Go ahead, Lisa.
2 things with that. So yes, and again, it's literally this bubble of people because we didn't know what the future model was going to look like, both in increments. So both of the 40 to 42.5 and 43.5, but we also didn't know the increments that new teachers would get a flat $1,000. So it's not just the jump in the base; it's that from here on out they were getting 1,000. So now it's accelerated what it was from 250 in the base and the Now you're also getting 1,000 on top of it, right?
Yeah.
So that's why that gap is now bigger than anybody anticipated. It's literally nothing, you couldn't have really anticipated that until there was a model in place in the future. So the board did the very best with what information you could in 2016.
Yeah.
But until there was an absolute model in place beyond that, and that we knew that new teachers were also going to get this $1,000,
Yeah,
which we
so-
didn't know off the bat.
yeah,
This
yeah.
isn't a blame thing, it's that we're finding some teachers who are just caught in here. They didn't have pre-2011, they didn't have a salary schedule, they weren't allowed to do master's degrees, they didn't have their or they didn't have any of that paid for them. They literally are caught in this gap, and they're not, and we actually understand it, because they were literally in this time where they weren't in control of it. People who were here prior to 2011 and decided not to get a master's degree or whatever they did, they had that option. That was a decision they had. These people really didn't have a choice or an option, and there wasn't a model for them to even know what their future looked like. So they were literally frozen in there for a little bit of time. And now the gaps from where they, like, it's and nothing they could have sort of done. And that's why I said if you gave some tangible
Yeah,
examples,
so-
it would it is, we're not talking like lots and lots of people. It is a small group of people that just got caught in this bubble. We're not
That
sure
gives me,
what to do.
yeah,
with
and
it.
that gives me a better idea too. So a second-year teacher right now, who last year got hired at 43.5, got their $1,000 increase, is now in 44.5. A third-year teacher being at 45.5, yet we have a couple eighth-year teachers at 46. That's getting caught at just the wrong time of the system. So that's a clear example of what we're looking at.
And I think that, above anything, you want to be fair to the people that you're trying to support here. And I think it's completely worth looking at what it would take or what kind of mechanisms we could do to kind of rebalance.
A rebalance would be a
smooth.
perfect word.
Yeah, well, yeah, not take
Yeah.
away from other people.
Yeah,
but
no,
what
yeah,
we could,
yeah.
what it would take and what kind of amounts we'd be looking at for doing that.
Yeah. Okay.
We'll get a mic.
Oh, thanks, Quinn. So what I'll do is I'll come back. Actually, I'm not going to be back on the 25th. Maybe I'll come back. It's going to be an awesome report on just some ideas on what we could do, what the dollars might look like. It could be something that is spread out over 2 fiscal years, something that we do now and then finish it up in 1920, right, where you kind of just balance it out over 2 fiscal years.
We didn't get here in 1 year, so.
It might be difficult to get there in 1 year. So I'll lay out some different scenarios, hopefully much more succinct than what I'm doing right now, and see where we go from there. This doesn't, though, stop the conversation about the micro-credential path and establishing our goals of that. And yep, okay, that's a separate track, and we're going to revisit that as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so then we're on to 8 items for future consideration. Does anyone have any? Yes.
Actually, I have 2 things. One thing was, I talked offline to Dr. Olson about this, is we had a research study that came out about a month ago talking about the unseen advantages or the unforeseen advantages of an active pre-K program and how the advantages were seen through the 8th grade now. And so I wanted to take a look at what we were doing, and Dr. Olson said that we've got some pretty dynamic work going in our pre-K, so I wanted to hear a report on that. And then another thing I wanted to look at was looking at a cum laude system for our graduates versus just strictly class rank and valedictorian and salutatorian. And that kind of ties in with the whole Freshman Academy honors program and kind of a direction we're leaning towards, so I wanted to take a look at that.
Great, great. Anyone else? Okay, then on to 9 announcements. So we're going to deviate a little bit since Dave is here. Instead of us trying to remember bits and pieces.
I wrote stuff down.
Oh, I did too, but Dave.
But you go ahead and you can summarize it better for us, probably.
So there's a lot going on with different clubs and athletics, and so you can just give us a quick rundown.
So I'll touch base on a couple, and I apologize if I miss anything. obviously at the end of each season, we will have an athletic recognition where I will go back through every sport that for the previous season and talk about the conference championships.
I don't think your mic is on.
Thank you.
So I'll give a brief summary of what we actually did. But again, at the end of the season, I will give a breakdown of how everybody did. But just recently, we had some great success in our swim team for the boys. We had a 200-yard medley relay qualify, drop 5 seconds from their seed time, and are only 1 second away from a school record, which is huge. And that consists of David Hahn, Matthew Bass, Matt Wobleski, and David Gonzalez. So it's kind of interesting that you have 2 Matthews and 2 Davids that are swimming in the relay. At the same time, David Gonzalez qualified in the 100 freestyle, and David Hahn qualified in the 100 backstroke, which that is this coming weekend. So that's on Friday at the Madison Natatorium. They will be swimming right around the 200 medley is right away in the beginning, so it's right around that 6 o'clock, and then the later ones are a little bit later. So we'll know exactly how the guys do by about 8 o'clock on Friday night. Our correct. Yep, we were sectional champs in the 200-yard medley and the 100-yard backstroke. So. We just finished our regionals wrestling tournament, and the number of wrestlers to go through, again, I'm going to be reiterating, but a number of those are going to be moving on to sectionals. We had 3 regional champions. I'm trying to think of all their names.
From Whitnall,
one from Greendale, right? It was Brandt.
Brand House, who's a senior. Some kid named
Kegel, yeah, I didn't really want to, mention that, but yeah.
And then Billy Sincere.
Sincere, yep.
From Greendale. There were a total of 10 that qualified for sectionals, so 10 out of the 14 wrestlers.
And I'll go through all of the names and exactly their accomplishments at the end of the season.
Sectionals are this Saturday. Every senior.
Yep. Our cheer team continues to win everything. This past weekend they had a competition, and they were divided into a Division I and Division II, and normally we compete Division II. And we again did compete Division II. However, our cheer team did outscore every Division I school as well. And we are the reigning non-tumbling state champions, and we are hoping to repeat at that. That goes into play of what just happened about a week ago. We had our banner unveil, our state championship banner unveil at the Battle of the Birds, the Greenfield Whitnall basketball game. And I thought it was kind of cool to see the softball team come back and our cheer team be there and pull the strings and see the tarp come down and unveil the banners. And we are looking forward to do that again for the dance team and any other team that we are going to have for the remaining of the year. So that's exciting. Some other things. This past weekend, Whitnall hosted a wheelchair basketball tournament that was a huge success. So Mr. Wilson, the FIA teacher over at the middle school, is the chair of that. He's part of the Wisconsin Adaptive Sports Program, and we hosted it here at Whitnall. Huge turnout where a number of kids that did not have disabilities had an opportunity to get into chairs and to experience that. So it was a great learning experience for the community as well as the students and the parents. Coming up at the end of February and beginning of March, we are going to be hosting an Activities Excitement Week where all of our clubs have an opportunity to sign up for a lunch period where they're going to have an activity where they can try to promote their club or organization to the student body that might not be aware that we have it. Everybody knows we have student council. A lot of people know we have DECA and National Honor Society, but they might not be aware that we have an art club. They might not be aware that we have a French club or robotics or anything like that. So we want to try to, bring that to the student body as much as possible so we can increase that participation. So that Activities Excitement Week is going to be that February 25th through March 1st, and they will sign up for a lunch period and do an activity for the student body to see at that time. So. And last but not least, girls basketball. We are the 5th seed, so we will be traveling to Cudahy on the 22nd for our first round of regional. We have a bye on the 19th, so then we'll play on the 22nd for that. Boys basketball, we don't know our seed quite yet because that's coming up this weekend. But again, we'll touch base with all of that at the end of the season. So just wanted to give a couple updates. And I don't know if I took some of your,
And
okay.
then theater, the production
Yep,
of You're
yep.
a Good Man, Charlie Brown is March 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 8th, and 9th.
Correct.
Tickets are available online, so if you are interested in that, thank you for doing this on the
Yep,
spot.
no problem.
Appreciate it, thanks.
And I just had one more thing. We had Todd Stacy put together a technology kind of plan group where we discussed trying to get a technology plan together for the district. There was some pre-work done by a group of administrators, including Todd and Mike, as far as where we want the district to be as a future plan with technology. So we had a lot of stakeholders at the meeting. It was a lot of good input. We put together our priorities of where we thought things were based off of what was gathered and what was brought together. So we're going to meet again. I don't know the exact date when we get some more specifics together.
We have a meet and greet this Wednesday at the middle school, room 219 at 7 p.m. And on Thursday at Edgerton in the library at 7 p.m. And then we have the primary Tuesday, February 19th.
So get out and vote.
In this room, for some of us.
Yeah. Okay, anybody else with announcements? Okay, then we'll move on to 10, Board of Education meeting debrief. A and B, A is review board meeting protocols, policy 0166.2, and B is board governance and roles. These were meant to be part of a full board discussion, but we didn't find out until yesterday that we would be missing a board member. So instead of making an amendment to the agenda today, we decided to go forward with it. So it's going to be more of an overview. Normally this is just kind of a free form. We still want to give that option, but we also want to highlight meeting protocols and also board governance and roles as construction amps up and more is going on. Just the reminder, Quinn, you brought it up in the fall with C.G. Schmidt here about we can't be in the trailers, right? We can't be in the middle of the construction site, right? It's not safe. Unauthorized visits to buildings, making sure that you're notifying Lisa first, letting her work through the channels instead of just showing up at buildings.
I mean, it's just, especially with regards to that, it's about being courteous to people that are there they're there working, they're doing their jobs. Trying to show up and interrupt what's going on in the buildings is just not acceptable. It's a matter of if you want to visit it, everybody's always welcome. It's said all the time. Just a matter of going through the right channels and saying, hey, could I possibly come in? That way the appropriate things can be rearranged and we're not disrupting education that's going on or meetings that might be happening or have these expectations that people should drop things, as soon as you walk in the door, which is not how it should be.
And frankly, you're putting employees in an awkward position, right? They may not feel comfortable saying, no, you shouldn't be here, right? Because they still see us as a board member, even though when we're outside this room, outside of a meeting, we're just a regular citizen, a parent, whatever. We don't carry any board responsibilities or rights, right? There's none of that as a board member. But you're still creating an uncomfortable situation, right? You should be acting as a normal citizen or parent or whatever capacity you're in, and respecting it just like we'd expect anyone else to, following board policies and procedures and everything else. So
When you do that, case in point, I came to the door here, and there was another person standing there, and they buzzed before me, and they got in, and I could have walked right in. And I didn't. I waited. I pressed the button. And the lady up front, I don't remember who it was, she's like, thank you for doing that. And it's just what you say. We're not putting that person on a spot.
Yeah.
I think we need to go above and beyond what normal protocols are because of people think we're different, So it really is about the employee. It's not about us.
no.
Aside from that, I just had one question because we have one of these on here. I think we could probably do a little more formally, just the whole speak only when recognized. I think if we took it more of as a formality, I mean, sort of how they did thing at the convention where one person's, it helps facilitate one person talking at a time. It's okay if you get into a conversation, but at the same time, so we're not stumbling over, I think we could have it a little more where each person's being recognized or called upon when they want to talk, as opposed to just kind of just going at it. It might bring a little more order. I mean, I don't think we're running into too much trouble now, but it might be a better thing to keep it a little more formal. I don't know.
And sticking to the everyone will have a chance to speak before another member can speak again,
Mhm.
right? Instead of allowing people to dominate a conversation, give more people an opportunity to speak. You can always come back, but
Yeah.
to direct any other.
Yeah, I think it might be interesting to ask the administrators if any other community members just stop in at the school and expect a tour or expect to talk to a teacher unannounced without an appointment, other than maybe someone from the board.
So, well, we've got some administrators here, I believe. So, do you mind opining on that? So I guess just a general question. Do you have a lot of community members stopping in saying, I want to tour the building? No.
One alumni from 1975 who wanted to get a picture of the softball, soccer, I don't know. Soccer, yeah. It was about
If we get anybody, it's usually because they want to more around like a behavioral thing and trying to work with the family around something going on in classrooms.
So a parent, though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Occasionally you'll get someone who wants to walk down memory lane, and so there's lots of, it's been there a while, so that will happen. And like that, occasionally we'll have someone who will come because something's occurred and wants to speak about it. That's okay.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on, but just if we're wondering what you experienced, well, since you're here, just ask. Okay. Anybody else?
Well, I would say you got 13 on there about supporting the board's vote and moving on. It's okay to still think like, oh, I wish we would have gone in this direction, but we should never be getting into constantly bringing it up or taking it to administration saying, gosh, this should have went this way. It shouldn't be that way. Once the vote happens, it happened. You're supposed to support it because you're a board as a whole, not an individual person. You can have your opinion, but the whole idea is we got to move forward. You can't sit and dwell on these things.
And just remember that you can have your own opinions
Yeah.
to that, but even the communications or conversations you have in the community, right? If you're sowing in doubt into what may or may not be happening between
Mhm.
boards or votes, it's not really helping. I mean, you can always listen and that, but if you've come across as speaking on behalf of the board, it doesn't help with what we're trying to accomplish here as we move forward. If you have just questions or we have those conversations here. That's what our discussion time is for. And then, as you said, once you vote, move on and implement it.
I think we should all have our own opinion, and I think it's one thing to voice your opinion, but it's another thing to try and push your agenda.
Yes.
Yeah. And I would say the other big thing too that I just had, and I'm sorry because I've been monopolizing the time and talking, so feel free to just interrupt me. But come to the meetings adequately prepared, because I don't think we should be asking questions about things that are in our packet. I mean, if something's 95 pages long of a report and you miss something, yeah, I get it. But if it's a one-page action item specifically and it has the information right on there, we shouldn't be trying to ask specific things that are in our packet. Or if someone says, well, what's this, this, and this, and it's in there, we shouldn't be taking up that time. We shouldn't be forcing someone to go find it for us. We should be doing our job of coming prepared. Obviously, some things are last minute and that can't be helped. But at the same time, that's our job as what we were elected to do, is be prepared for these to have adequate discussion when we're here.
Anybody else? All right, thank you all for the conversation tonight. I think it was a great meeting. Covered a lot. Obviously, we'll have the finance facilities meeting coming up, so we'll get a date out as soon as possible, and all that information out as well. So thank you all, and with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn. So moved. Second?
All right.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Stephen does not want to stay later tonight, so that's a good thing. All right. Have a great evening.
There you go.